my point of view to this great discussion. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are living in a time when technology is transforming not only industries, but also the movement of talent across borders. AI, quantum technologies, digital platforms, and green transition industries are reshaping global labor markets at a speed not witnessed before. At the same time, demographic change and rapid innovation are creating a growing gap between the skills available and the skills needed. This raises a broader question for all of us. Are our immigration systems and employment and skills policies fully prepared for this new reality? In this new landscape, labor mobility is no longer simply about filling shortages. It is about enabling innovation ecosystems to function. High-skilled mobility connects research to industry, startups to global markets, and ideas to implementation. If we fail to align mobility, skills policy, and innovation policy, we risk slowing technological adoption and weakening competitiveness. For Finland, attracting and retaining international talent is a strategic priority. We compete with other advanced economies for highly skilled professionals, researchers, and entrepreneurs. Success in this competition does not depend on a single factor such as salary or taxation. It depends on the strength of the whole ecosystem, world-class research, predictable regulation, and a society where families can build a stable life. In an AI-driven labor market where job roles are changing faster than education systems can adapt, cooperation between governments, industry, and education providers becomes essential. We have therefore built a national framework through our Talent Boost program and work in Finland to align innovation policy, labor market needs, and international recruitment. We are investing in faster and more predictable residence permit processes, launching targeted deep tech initiatives such as our superposition campaign, and expanding doctoral training in strategic research fields. But mobility in the technology age must also be responsible and mutually beneficial. It requires trust between countries, ethical recruitment practices, and policies that support both economic competitiveness and social sustainability. Remote work is growing, and many skills can now be delivered digitally across borders. But innovation does not happen only online. Research, industrial scaling, and deep technology development still depend on people working together in the same place. Finland sees India as a key long-term partner in high-skilled mobility and technology cooperation. Our ecosystems complement each other, particularly in ICT, AI, and research collaboration. The question before us today is not whether talent will move. Ladies and gentlemen, it will. The question is how we shape that moment to strengthen innovation, growth, and opportunity in a way that benefits both our societies. So, ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to this great panel discussion. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Minister. Hello, everyone. From my side, my name is Carolyn. I'm the Managing Director of Berlin Global Dialogue, and it's my pleasure to be your moderator for this session. So, following the remarks from the Minister, we want to talk about the global labor market today on this panel. And being in India, I don't think there's a better place for it. By 2030, India will have over 1 billion people in the working age. and India is expected to contribute to close to 25% of all new global workforce entrants. At the same time, when we look to Europe, we're starting to face systemic labor shortages. According to some predictions, Europe could lose over 20% of its current labor force by 2070. And of course, that has major implications on economies and competitiveness. So when you then also throw in technology and how it has and continues to really disrupt our idea of what constitutes labor, I think we have a lot of ground to cover today. I would first like to turn to you, Radhika. You're an employment specialist at the International Labour Organization. When we talk about global mobility and we can see the benefits obviously for economies and for the individual, but I guess not all work is created equal. So I would like to ask you to maybe give us some guardrails on what we can consider decent work in this global labor market. And also, I would be interested in your views on how the removal of location is a key factor for employability, if that's really creating new opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's a real pleasure to be here. I think let me start by picking up on something that the minister highlighted in his context-setting remarks, which is the issue of labor mobility and how the very definition and the concept of labor mobility is changing. Because mobility is no longer just physical, it's digital, it's task-based, and it's AI-mediated. Now, of course, we've all seen the digital transformation of the workplace, which has been accelerated by the rise of online labor platforms, which has made remote work, third-party subcontracting, distributed teams, all of this technologically feasible. And this, as you rightly noted, creates many employment opportunities and income earning opportunities for people in the global south that they can tap into globally. The other aspect also is the impact of AI, which is critical to this discussion. Now, there's a lot of discussion on the impact of AI in terms of job displacement and job creation. But what AI is also doing more fundamentally is changing occupations. It's altering occupational roles. Because any given occupation has a number of tasks, some of which are going to be automated and some of which are not going to be automated. So AI is essentially leading to a fragmentation or an unbundling of occupations into tradable tasks. Now, those tasks which can be automated will be, and those which cannot, many of them are actually going to be outsourced to geographies where it's cheaper to do that. So that unbundling of occupations into tasks will also open up many avenues and opportunities for people in the global south to access work in the global north without actually being physically mobile. So yes, there are many opportunities, but like you said, the ability to tap into those opportunities is not equal for everyone. It will depend critically on whether you have access to digital skills, whether you have access to digital infrastructure, be it a basic computer, be it a reliable broadband connection, electricity. So unless long-standing concerns about the digital divide are not addressed, these opportunities, which will come from the concept of digital mobility, task-based mobility, cannot be tapped into by workers in the global south. Now, the key issue, apart from this, is really how do we bring decent work into this digital transformation, into the digital labor market. And this is really a critical issue. It's something which is central to what the International Labour Organization is also discussing at the International Labour Conference, both in 2025 and 2026. Because the key issue is that the online labor platforms basically bypass national legislations. So the question that then arises is that which are the labor laws that are going to apply? You have a platform which is in one country, you have a client which is in another country, and then you have a worker who is yet in another country. So given these cross-country jurisdictions, which country's labor laws are going to apply to this digital work? Then again, social protection. We really have no global, easily established mechanisms of ensuring social security contributions for workers who are working in these digital labor markets. And this also then has a downside, which is that it can potentially lead to a race to the bottom. because if it is national labor legislations which will determine the protections of workers, then there will be a tendency for a lot of this digital work to move to economies where worker protections are actually the weakest. And then finally, there is also the issue of the AI algorithms, because humans will no longer in this digital world of work be managed by other humans, but by AI, be it their evaluation, be it deactivation of their accounts. And this can lead to a lot of, opaque and discriminatory practices, which then also raises questions around the freedom of association and collective bargaining when it comes to digital workers. So let me wrap up here basically by saying that, the key issue is really one of having appropriate guardrails in place. When we talk about mobility, as in physical mobility and migration and physical migration, we do have frameworks in place to ensure fair and rights-based migration. We need to think about how we can do this in a digital world of work, and how we do this in a manner that benefits both employers and employees, and ensures that digital opportunities are very much there, but at the same time, the rights of the workers are protected.
Thank you so much. Alexander Schallenberg, I would like to bring you in next. You've been Chancellor of Austria twice and also Minister of Foreign Affairs for Austria at a time when migration was really on top of the agenda. I think today competitiveness is the key word that we talk about day and night in Europe. And when we talk about competitiveness in Europe, the story usually goes something like this. We have all of the key ingredients in Europe. We have science and research for technological advances. We have the industrial base, and we have highly skilled talent to be competitive. And then quite often we talk about capital and harmonization of markets as our barriers. So labor shortages and talent is usually not identified as an area which we really need to address, even though if you look at the demographic developments, it seems like an obvious problem we will face in the coming years. So I would like to hear from you if you think European policymakers are really understanding the impact of labor shortages on competitiveness and what needs to happen to address that.
Well, I can make my answer very easy. Yes, we do. In theory, everything seems to be very clear. By 2050, a third of the European population will be pensioners. We have a median age in Austria of 44 years. I believe in India it's 29 years. So just looking at the facts, things become very clear. And we already have now, I believe, 2/3 of small and medium-sized enterprises, not only in Austria, but all around Europe, saying that they're having problems finding skilled workers. Alone according to surveys, Germany would need 400,000 immigrants a year to fill the gaps. In Austria, about 170,000. So the facts are very clear. The problem is, I could wrap it up in one sentence of Jean-Claude Juncker, the former president of the Commission and Prime Minister of Luxembourg. We know exactly what to do. We simply don't know how to get re-elected afterwards. The problem is, migration is a poisoned topic. It's a hijacked topic. You cannot politically say, and it has been poisoned by illegal immigration. And that is the biggest, thorn in our side to a certain degree. Austria was, many in this room might not know it, on continental Europe from 2015 to 2022, the most affected country by illegal immigration per capita. So alone in 2022, we had 120,000 asylum seekers in Austria. If you put this number per capita to Germany, it would be 1 million asylum seekers in Germany. You can imagine the public debate we are having. And these people are not the skilled workers we're looking for. So the problem is, the debate is poisoned. We would know exactly what to do, but it's politically extremely difficult because the migration debate, I would say in all around Europe, has been hijacked by the fringes. Either the I would say now the left-leaning saying we have to open borders, we are those who did colonialism, we have the historic, obligation to heal all the wounds of the world, and then the more right-wing parties who say everybody coming to this country is an immigrant we don't need and we don't want. So to conduct a sensible policy in the middle is extremely difficult. I'm happy now that the European Union is getting to terms. And the debate is advancing, but there are ways and means. I signed in 2023 with Jai Shankar, my friend, a comprehensive migration and mobility deal, where we made it easier for Indian students and for Austrian students to vice versa visit the country, working day holidays, university exchanges, but also very clear clauses on return of illegal migrants. And Jai at the time made it very clear. We, India, we want legal migration to Austria. We don't want illegal migration. That was extremely helpful because many third countries, countries of origin, don't say that and are not cooperative. And that is the biggest problem. But there are ways and means. But again, how come we achieved this agreement between Austria and India on a comprehensive mobility and migration agreement? Because suddenly in 2022, we had a surge. We had over 20,000 Indian asylum seekers in Austria, which for me, I grew up in Delhi, I wouldn't expect any Indian to ever apply for asylum in Austria. This was economic migration, covered up as, political migration. They flew into Belgrade with working permits in Serbia, and then went on foot or by car, whatever means, and arrived in Austria. And the moment they crossed the borders, they said asylum. So we managed to do something good between Austria and India, but only because we had a crisis beforehand. And that is probably one of the features of migration which makes it so difficult. You first need a problem before you can tackle it. Although I will presume the debate today will show the facts are very clear and we would know what to do in theory.
Thank you. Sanjeev, so we've heard about the political difficulties to make the case for more legal migration for work. I am eager for you to bring in the perspective from business here. PwC released a paper last year together with ORF, I think it's also here in the room, where you're advocating for the opportunities from the Indian workforce and the demographic dividend from India. Can you tell us a little bit more about that opportunity and what needs to happen to really leverage that?
Yeah, no, thank you so much, and glad to be here. So I think the economic case for migration, legal migration, is already made. I won't repeat any of that. And what work we did last year was really to sort of talk about, what frameworks could we come up with to make sure that, that is enabled as opposed to being looked upon as something which is parasitical, if I may call it so. And yes, as was being said, I think the average working age in India is about 28, 29 years. And we see many other countries really struggling. And let me just say, it's not just a global north issue, it's also an issue in south. I mean, if you look at countries like Thailand, for instance, where population has been declining, it's an issue in those countries as well. So I just want to make it a point that it's not just a global south and a global north issue. In terms of the framework that we set up, what we proposed really was multiple ways, right? I mean, one, of course, is onshore jobs. Onshore jobs are where the host country is willing to accept skilled workers and embrace them into society. And that's obviously the best, because that's when, the flavor of humanity really, in some ways comes through. But if that's not the case, and there are many host nations which would not want that to happen, or where societies may not accept, there we propose what we would call offshore clusters, where anything which is of relevance to the host country, let's say IT jobs, maybe medical jobs, etc., there could be offshore clusters which could get created, where all workforce of that particular nature are housed, and they are able to, in some ways contribute to the economy of the host country, because otherwise they're losing GDP and so on and so forth. I mean, the economic benefits that we have spoken about. We also spoke about guest worker programs, because in some cases people don't want, even legal immigration to be for long periods of time. And can there be guest worker programs that could be there? I think, one of the key things which is possibly going to enable this is what kind of certification do we have? Because when we look at legal immigration, and I'm talking again legal immigration, if I do a degree in India, right, and that is not accepted in the host nation, whether it is Europe or Japan or Australia or wherever, then that person has to go through another round of skilling to be accepted in the host country society, which makes it challenging. So I think there is certainly a need for certification, and I think there are certifications which are there in the ASEAN region. I think there is an international one as well, and there is Europass in Europe. So I think that is another one that we said that needs to be harmonized. Now, I'll be quick. I think I was just looking at the EU FTA that we have done, and there is a comprehensive chapter on how India and EU can actually focus on mobility on a go-forward basis. So there is a framework which has been set up, which would enable skilled Indian workmen to actually go into Europe could be nursing, could be medicine, could be chartered accountancy, could be IT, where their learnings in India or their certification in India would get recognized in Europe, so that it makes it easier. Secondly, it talks about ease of visas and so on and so forth, whether it is a business visa for 90 days, in intercorporate transfers, which could be up to 3 years' time. And of course, it could be longer also. I mean, if that is really desirable by the host country. But I think the most important thing was the European Union's assessment that they actually need to set up a facility in India where they're actually saying that this is a skill set that we need in Europe, and anybody in India who wants to go to, and can believe that they can fulfill the requirements can actually go in. They can put in their their skill sets, and then there is facilitation for transfers and with visas and so on and so forth. So I think to me that what really happened in the EU-India FTA is one mechanism by which this can actually come through. It can be executed. What we mentioned in our report last year. But yes, I'm largely focusing on legal migration to the point that you made earlier. And I think that the economic benefits could come through if we focus on some of these matrices.
Okay. František, we talk a lot about the economic opportunities. Your organization, OECD, has released a study last year where you found that actually labor migration to rich countries has gone down by a fifth last year because job markets have weakened and also some countries have tightened their visa regimes. Sanjeev already touched on a few new models, how we can think about immigration. How do you think we need to update our immigration systems to really get the skills that we need into the host countries?
Thank you. I was expecting what questions you will put me at the end, because you indicated several of them. So first, let me say one thing. I mean, I would very much subscribe what Chancellor Schallenberg said, and I would like to thank him for taking the political burden from my shoulders.
You can take it on as well. It's fine.
No. I mean, we are from the countries that probably experienced all kind of internal, regional, external effects and aspects of the migration over the period of time. And yes, there is the study, and the question is right that in the time of the digitalization and a very fast entry into the labor of the artificial intelligence, we think that there will be sort of like the decrease in pressure on the labor mobility. But what is happening, according to the studies, on the contrary. And the second, in spite of this fact, there is a decrease level of the migrations into the countries, into the so-called rich countries, or the countries of the OECD. And then let me focus on the three areas, I think. The first, why. The second, what we should do. And the third, artificial intelligence, how can the artificial intelligence help? So the first, why this is happening. And I think, and let me go back to the years 2017, 2018, when the United Nations was negotiating the Global Compact on Migration. At the time, we were able to agree on the text, and of course on the definition of the regular and irregular migration, which was very important, I mean, for the methodology and for the approach. The thing is that since 2018, the world was able to generate so many global crises that almost nothing that has been agreed and that was valid 8 years ago can be applied today. And it's not only because of the climate change, it's not only because of the causes of the migrations, which are the wars, and it's not only because of the digitalization and the artificial intelligence. So what happened since then was that the countries started to apply more restrictive measures for the migration. The second, the administrative complexity to get into the system of the labor became so difficult for the labor migrants that it's almost impossible, in spite of the fact what Chancellor Schallenberg was mentioning, that there is the extreme need of the labor force in European countries because of the aging of the population and the collapsing of the pension systems in a few years. And the third is the competition between the countries. And also, in the past, the migration, for the labor migration, was created for the permanent settlement, whereas today, the new technologies are requiring much more dynamic, way of the mobility of the labor force from country to country and from sector to sector. So what we should do, the second is how we can, and then this again, it's not absolute what I'm going to say, this is inter alia. We should first make the migration system working faster, which does not mean that we will make them less precise, but we will use the artificial intelligence for the better exchange of the data, which will fasten up the administrative processes. The second is, we have still the problems with the recognition of the skills. In many countries, for example, we need the skilled workers, but we don't have the bilateral or multilateral agreements on recognizing the skills of the, for example, graduates in India, in the countries of Europe or somewhere else. The second, we have to create the pipelines. Well, we don't know how to find out the right skilled labor force in the countries and to create the pipeline that they can migrate here and there. We are talking about the labor migration. They can come to work in a country of destination, but they also should have the way and the right to come back to the country of the origin. And then the labor migration is not only about the visa, but it's about offering the people who are migrating for labor the whole complex systems of their living standards and the possibilities. So now, very quickly on the paradoxes, what also the OECD study found in the way of using the artificial intelligence. You would probably all expect that the artificial intelligence is the most used in the OECD member states. But let me just share with you some data which shows and where is the advantage of the countries that seemingly may not, including like India, be the leaders in this, is the AI usage. Only 20% of respondents in Japan, Germany, Italy, France report actively using generative AI. India, 60%. AI usefulness, over 75% of respondents in India, Brazil, Mexico, and South Africa find AI completely useful. This share does not exceed 50% in Japan and Netherlands, and it's below 60% in the countries like France, Italy, and the United States. And the trust level is the same. 70% of respondents in India, Brazil, Mexico, and South Africa find AI completely trustworthy, while share does not exceed 50% in Japan and Netherlands. And the last fact, that how can AI help, to create the conditions for the labor quality in the countries of the origin, but also contribute to the growth of the GDP, is that the use of the AI in India and in the implementation of the AI in India over the next 10 years can contribute to the growth of the GDP from 0.4 to 1% annually every year, 10 years. So I think that these are the huge impacts that AI may have, also not only to help the dynamics of the labor market, labor force movement, but also the dynamics within the countries that can offer much more opportunities for the young people to enter the labor market. So I probably stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go to Sabine next, who's joining us online. After that, I will open it for questions from the audience. So we want to put you to work as well to stay with the theme of our panel. Already get ready if you want to ask a question. Sabine, you joining us online from Dubai for obvious reasons. We hope you're keeping safe. Also, we wanted to demonstrate some remote work on our panel as well, so very fitting. You built and founded VFS, a global visa and consular service leader 25 years ago. You handle over 30 million visa applications every year, and you also work very closely with governments on targeted frameworks on talent acquisition. And a lot of that starts with education and student mobility. So I would like you to share a little bit more on how you do that, how you work with governments and universities and companies, and what we can learn from that to update our migration systems. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so let me start with your second question first. Most of the advanced economies are between the skill and demographics. And the esteemed panelists have already spoken about legal and focused migration. I also heard about the 2023, the mobility agreement signed between India and Austria. I think on the back of that, we started a way, what we call innovative way to ensure that it's a win-win situation for the people who are traveling, especially the skilled people, for the host country which is going to receive them, and to make sure that there is security in the process. So what we did was we tied up with 3 of the largest technical universities of Austria to work on a model which not only identifies the right students, does the background checks, does the verification, supports the visa process, and along with that, helps them to bridge the integration into the Austrian society, work on the culture part of the same, and then later on, making sure that the Austrian economy and the what you call country that is sending the people have a win-win situation in terms starting from the education stage. So we have 150 students already enrolled in October 25 in the Austrian TU universities of Austria, Wien, and Graz. And now what we are doing is working with TU Austria and the Austrian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the authorities to make sure that we have a pathway of skilled STEMs education, what we call skill set, that goes from India to Austria in a way that it is not only efficient, but also secure. And I think this is where we need to look at with the small example of how we can make sure that we have the right skill set, targeted and focused, what the economies need 5 to 10 years down the line, and then source them from the markets that are having this capability to produce these skill sets and are ready to export them. So I think the TU Austria and India mobility, what we call pathway that we have started has been working extremely well. And it's, as I said, it's quite win-win-win. So it's win for the host country because it gets the student at the education stage. He gets a 3-year scholarship. Then he gets a 1-year, what we call internship in one of Austria's or any of Austria's largest companies. So he gets there to work. So he's already integrated into the society before he decides to stay back and work more in Austria or in Europe. So this part of sourcing the right people, making sure that they are culturally sensitized, making sure that there is security verification all done before they travel to Austria, making sure they are integrated in the Austrian universities, it becomes easier for the workforce later on, to be, engaged. I think one of the key factors that we see out here is mobility and skill set is moving towards a targeted and more focused approach in migration, because the governments, especially growing economies and economies that have a demographic decline, are looking 5 to 10 years down the line what they actually need. And they've already identified that, as the Chancellor and most of my colleagues on the panel said. People have identified. Now they're trying to find a way of how to do this without having any issues of illegal migration. And TU Austria and VFS has started this pathway, and we hope that this will create the what we call comfort and the credibility that is required between host countries and a country like India, which has signed under the auspices of our Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi ji, the mobility agreements with a lot of European countries to manage this throughout the year.
Thank you so
So
much.
that's it from my side. But this is a very good example that we have already started, and I'm sure that this will be, taken up with a lot of other countries in the future.
Thank you so much, Sabine. Austria is getting a lot of airtime on our panel. Are there any questions from the audience already? Oh, there's somebody coming. Please state your name and your organization and your question, and please also let us know who you are directing your question to from our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you. Marianna Marcucci. I'm from All Digital, Belgium. Thank you for saying that we are aging. Actually, in Europe, that's one of our main issues. My question is, I guess for everyone who wish to answer, it's more about education and migration. As we work in All Digital, in education, in digital inclusion, we know that people don't move fast, but like ideas, AI, technology, they move really fast. So as we work in non-formal education, in All Digital, my question is, are we ready, university will kill me for this, but are we ready to move from formal degrees to maybe some sort of micro credentials and that allow us to have a mutual recognition that will be really, let's say, borderless? Thank you.
Anyone wants to volunteer for this question?
Well, I can go first. Even before migration, because you speak about AI and the digital age, I think even countries like India, which have done really well on the IT services side, I think just reskilling and fresh skilling of our people is absolutely critical. Now that possibly requires us to reshape our educational system in itself, right? So the formal degree, and a lot of it is rote learning, etc. As we know, I mean that's going to go out of the window. I mean coding is going to go out of the window, and we know that, right? So some of that requires a shift in the education systems, etc. And particularly when it comes to immigration, I think as all of us have said, possibly requirement for this, refreshed education establishments to be certified, to be cross-certified, to be cross-verified by each other so that we sign off and we can leverage those people, we can leverage those skill sets almost immediately. Otherwise, it's a long-term exercise. The other point that I would like to make is that, innovation, see, in some ways, we grew up from a time when they said that talent is like water. I mean, it has to flow where it is required the most, etc. Unfortunately, with all these barriers that are getting created, we're also having differential skill sets. Forget the age gap. We're also having differential skill sets. Why is it that today the best of the universities want to go to, let's say, some of the global south and not come to maybe some of the, because the student count is not that. It is also about economics for the universities and so on and so forth. So I think we need to look at that also. How do we make it profitable, and look at the economics of these educational establishments? That also is a factor.
Thank you. Do we have another questions from the audience? Next one up.
A very good morning, sir, ma'am. My name is Shivansh. I am the founder of a private upskilling organization based out of India. So my question is very direct and simple, some issue that I faced when I was going abroad for my studies as well. So a lot of students that I met, we must be aware IELTS and TOEFL and other English language testing systems are very common with be it universities or for migrations as well. So one is that part, that obviously the students who have access to study abroad consultants or maybe people that they can access and get more information to while going to their dream college, they have it. But on the contrary comes digital divide, where still government has, by the grace of the present government, we have a lot of policies through which a lot of Indian citizens can go abroad, but still there is a lot of clarity that is still remains a black hole. So that is what I faced at ground level. So I understand there are policies, I understand there are migration systems, I understand people have to go to website, there is AI. But what about those students who are still facing digital divide and are not able to access that level and are still unclear with IELTS and TOEFLs being the basic, you can say English clarity, where reading, writing, listening, speaking are the 4 mediums, but they are still unaware of it. Thank you.
So lack of transparency. Adika, do you want to come in on this? Do we have another question? Let's go first.
So let me just very quickly say, I think that's the downside. You're absolutely right, because to the first question that Caroline also asked, this opens up so many opportunities. But unless these concerns about the digital divide are addressed, unless people not only have access to digital skills, but also information, also infrastructure, these opportunities cannot be leveraged. And I think, if I can just go back to the previous question as well, and how to make the immigration systems faster. I'll just quickly come in here. One big issue also is that immigration systems and visa systems are based on occupational classifications. Now, occupational classifications are changing so rapidly because of AI. The skill requirements of occupations are changing so rapidly because of AI, and we have very little information about them. We have to constantly be monitoring, what are the new skill demands which are emerging, how job roles are changing, and do labor market forecasting and ensure that the immigration and the visa systems are actually responsive and agile. So it has to be a two-way process. It's the employers, the workers, together with the governments that have to work together to ensure that labor market information systems are also responsive to the changes that are happening on account of AI.
Thank you. František, you want to comment on this as well?
Yeah, well, I just also would like to go to the previous question.
Yeah, of
also.
course,
So
please.
you see, we like the questions. We don't kill messengers anymore here. We are very peaceful nations. So very brief 4 points. The first, the aging. The aging is on one side is very good, of course, because we are living longer. The problem is for the economy and for the societies, it's a huge burden. And of course, it creates a lot of pressures on the public finances, on the pension systems, but also, creates the gaps in the labor market. So which of course creates the need to improve the conditions of the labor market access for the migrant workers. The second point is on the mobility. There are the professions which have the high or low level of mobility because of the technology. They can work from home and work for the global company anywhere in the world, in Sweden, in Finland, in California. And there are the same IT companies that have the high level of the mobility because the experts, the IT or the AI experts are moving from Dubai to California to Germany to respond to that. But then there are also the professions that have to be on the spot. You cannot have the surgeon operating from Finland, anyone who is in Belgium. Well, maybe you can, but I don't think that you would like to see on the YouTube how to use the scalpel to make the session in your operation of the appendix. So the thing is that for these professions we have to create, and then we are going back again to the classification of the professions, that you can have the attestation that graduating from the Indian university, you can do the medical practice in Austrian hospital. The third, micro-credentials, definitely yes. Our study shows that that's the way how can the businesses and the government improve the compatibility of the different kind of the professions in a much more dynamically changing world of the labor needs, which is like my education 40 years ago would last for 20 years. But the education when I graduate today, the quality of my education will deteriorate in 2-3 years because of the technological progress. So we have to have the system of micro-credentials and upskilling and reskilling. Digital divide, yes. At the OECD, one of the studies says that we can create the guidelines for the use of the artificial intelligence that has to be accessible to everyone without any discrimination everywhere in the world, and use this tool to improve the natural skills, not the artificial skills of the students, to make them more compatible and more competitive in the international labor markets.
Thank you. So we only have 5 minutes left. I will take 2 questions at once from the audience, and then you can use that as your closing statements as well.
Conversation. I'm Prachi. I'm a classical dancer and the founder of an independent film production company. Now, my work naturally takes me across borders because a lot of the work I do are co-productions. And legal mobility for globally mobile professionals like me is still a very high friction process. And the panel has talked about setting up stronger guardrails against illegal migration. So I'm just wondering whether there are policy conversations around reducing friction for legally mobile professionals like me, while also setting up those guardrails so that those goals don't work against each other.
Thank you. And the second question?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kaveri Raj. I'm a second year student from Department of East Asian Studies, Delhi University. So my question is, in many global South countries, talent mobility is often experienced as a brain drain rather than a brain circulation. So I want to understand, like, as advanced economies compete for skilled workers to sustain innovation, how can international mobility frameworks be designed to ensure that developing economies also benefit from these global talent flows and technological transformations? Thank you.
Thank you. So we have two questions, one on kind of how to resolve the contradiction.
Maybe very briefly, because of many issues touched upon. I would say, again, as I said at the beginning, there are many things we know exactly that we have to do them. We simply don't, and I don't want to be the ice bucket thrower here, but when you talk about education, yes, absolutely. We're not capable within the common market of the European Union to have a unified system. Try to discuss with the Ministry of Education or the rectorate of a university, they will all sit there and defend their own system at all costs. So it will be difficult. One thing, without answering actually a question, I want to put a positive note. We take for granted, I think this is something great and something the Indians can be proud about, that people are mobile, that they're willing. That's a factor we don't take into notice. Because, for instance, within the common market of the European Union, we had, 15, 20 years ago, 25% of jobless rate in Spain. The Spanish young people didn't move to Germany and Austria, where we had actually full employment. So there is even a lack of willingness to move within industrialized Western countries. And I think the fact that young Indians want to move abroad, whether it's the US, UK, the European Union, Austria, and I'm happy, by the way, to see our colleague from Dubai. As a politician, you don't always have the experience that things you do actually do have an impact in life. So Jai and I will be very pleased to hear that the agreement we signed in 2023 actually changed something, even if to a small degree. But I think you should be proud that you have this mobile youth, which is curious, which wants to discover the world and conquer the world to a certain degree. And I can only tell you, and this is probably a politician speaking here, we want more Indians in Austria, a lot more of you guys.
Thank you. Sanjeev, did you want to come in on the second question, or Radhika?
On the second question, I think that's a very interesting question. And I think one of the challenges that will emanate from this issue of physical versus digital mobility is also that may well exacerbate the brain drain. Because for certain occupations, especially AI-related roles, where physical proximity will be important, where you will want high-skilled people to be in these innovation clusters, where there will be concerns around security. So there's going to be likelihood of greater high-skill physical migration as a consequence of AI. And on the other side, those who are at the lower end of the education and skills ladder might be doing things more digitally. So that could actually exacerbate and increase the challenge of the brain drain, and how we ensure that talent circulation and how we strike that balance of digital opportunities versus rights of protection is at the very heart of the question that we're trying to answer here. So I think that's a great question, but we don't have any easy solutions to that.
Okay. We still have 90 seconds left. So for whoever, let's ask one more questions from the audience.
Hello, ma'am. I have a question for Zubin. My name is Neeraj Kumar and I am from News 18 India. It is part of Network 18. How do you see student mobility to the overseas country, and how is VFS performing in the business to provide hassle-free services?
Thank you for your question. Yeah, so as you know that almost 2 million students from India travel abroad for education. So it's a big number. And we manage most of the host countries that take these students. Now, let me give you an example about Austria, which we are managing in a very different way. So we don't make the which say who comes into the country, but we follow a very diligent and secure process. So for the ease, we have opened all the Austria and India mobility, what we call pathway for 10 engineering students, is information centers where the student can go and get the information, get the right, what we call understanding of the program, get the right, what we call information on the requirements for a visa, and what actually the course is holding and what is his career path. So we try to support in that manner, and this is specifically for Austria and India with the TU universities on the STEM pathway. Apart from that, we have always supported all the students with whatever information they need through our chatbot, call centers, or physical at the VFS centers for whatever information that they require. The important part is the counselors. You know, as you know, there are thousands and thousands of counselors in India who the student goes first to. And the counselor then advises the student which university that they should go to and what's their career pathway. They come to us at a much later stage once they've chosen to go to a certain host country or a certain university. And the counselor usually prepares their documentation. So we do not create the documentation. We just accept the documentation based on the requirements of each government. We work with 70 governments worldwide in 150 countries. So the rules and regulations of student documentation is managed by each country, and as each country has their particular requirement. So for us is to guide the student to make sure that they submit the right documentation. And from my experience, whenever a genuine student has submitted the right documents, there has never been an issue.
Thank you so much. We're getting clear sign that our time is up. So please join me in thanking our panelists, and thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much.